All right, we're ready to start.
All right, good afternoon. I'd like to call the August 7, 2023 Civil Service Commission meeting to order. Roll call present are Vanessa, Chief, Deputy Chief, I was working on it, Leilani, Commissioners Madeline and Commissioner Jerry, and myself, Amanda Vey. Asked for a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Call for the vote. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting, agenda approved. Approval of the meeting minutes. Wow, minutes for the meeting of May 1, 2023. Call for a motion to approve.
Summer.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting of minutes approved. You're still good? Yep, we're good. Okay. New business. Chief.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. I'd like to report for the second quarter, which is April 1st, ending June 30th of this year, our results of our hiring efforts. We screened a total of 43 applications. 38 of those are entry level, 5 were lateral officer applications. Of that, 3 were automatically disqualified using our disqualification system. After the initial round of interviews, 9 people were disqualified at that rank. Then the candidates are then asked to upload their documents into our Guardian system, which is an online record-keeping document archival system, of which 1 person was then disqualified from the process. We then had chief interviews, of which the folks that were put into background process, 1 has been was disqualified in the background process. 2 withdrew from the process, and we currently have a total of 27 as of the 30th of June in the background process, which isn't totally accurate. That's kind of where we're at. Bringing that forward, just to give a preview of next quarter. Currently, for the month of July, we have a total of 8 people in various stages of background. We have 5 vacancies. We have an officer being reinstated who had previously retired to join the Gambling Commission starting up on the 15th of this month. And we have 2 officers in pre-academy. We've had 2 officers graduate from the academy, 1 at the end of June, 1 at the beginning of January. I'm sorry, July. Wow. So we have 2 in the field training officer program. We have another officer scheduled to graduate the academy end of this month. So that's my report.
Any concerns?
Well, I have to say, we're going through a lot of applications. Not as many qualified applicants as I would like. Obviously, I'd like to have all those positions filled already. It is taking an awful long time to get folks into the academy. There's just not a lot of academy space. A lot of people trying to get people in the academy. They're running roughly 300 people at the academy at any one time in various classes. They're opened up 2 remote academies, 1 currently open east of the Cascades. They're going to open up another remote academy up in Skagit. They'll run 2 classes a year, and then potentially 1 down in Clark County, which will also 1 or 2 classes a year. Even with that, the state is in a multi-year backlog for officers. To help us with that, we have assigned an officer as a tactical instructor at the academy. That gives us access to any vacancies that pop up in classes before they start. It is our hope we'll get both our current pre-academy applicant or recruits into the academy in October. Otherwise, we'll be waiting until April or May of next year for those 2. And folks who haven't hired yet would be even after that. So it's our hope so we'll get them into some vacancies that tend to pop up here and there.
Yeah.
And then whatever laterals we can attract as well.
Thank you very much. Civil service rules update.
Okay, so as we have been going through this process, I decided to bring the rest of my suggestions to this meeting, so hopefully we can get those reviewed. I did send the last set of edits and suggestions out to the commission officers. I have received no feedback from that as of yet, so I will do the same thing from here. So as you'll see in these, I don't know if that sound is, in the packets that I've provided to the commission, Anything that is highlighted in yellow are the new or adjusted changes. So I'm keeping all the track change to make sure that we have a full document to review at the next meeting. As you'll see on page 3, I did remove the reduction section that was left over from our previous review. And then the next suggestion is on page 6. It is in our rules and regulations section for public notice. I did discuss with the city clerk, and they said through media outlets would be a good change from newspaper, since most of us use other media outlets at this time. The few changes to the rule 3 on page 10 is to the secretary and chief examiner section. It is just making a little bit of consistency in reading, making it a little bit clearer. We did talk about the adjustment to the secretary and or chief examiner at the last meeting, so I made sure to change that verbiage there. And in page 11, I changed allocated to reclassified, just so that we have consistency in our verbiage that we did discuss last meeting. The more substantial changes are going to be on page 12 for rule 5 for applications. What I did here was I made some adjustments to some of the things that we already had in there, or items that we included. So in section 2, for minimum qualifications, I added in or as otherwise set forth by RCW WAC, then to WACs. These do talk about the requirements for becoming a police officer in those. So I wanted to make sure that we just encompass that instead of outlining those specifically. We have a reference point, and also adjusted the certificate for the pre-employment medical to state pre-employment medical for our HR director's recommendation. I also expanded class to classification in section 3 letter A. And in letter G, I instead of deception or fraud in securing eligibility, I changed eligibility to say examination, certification, or appointment, made it more clear and concise with the rest of the language that we're using throughout the rules. I added in for letter J, application and or supplemental information required is incomplete. That is one of our disqualifiers. So your application will be rejected if your application or your supplemental questionnaires are incomplete. And also for letter K, applicant violated rules set forth by the commission or test administrator. Just gives a little bit more of a purview for us as hiring entities. A little bit further down in there, I added a little bit of language for the chief examiner may permit. I added and assist an applicant to amend an application prior to initial screening of application for good cause shown. That was, and we discussed in our last meeting, to be a little bit more clear that it needs to be brought up to me prior to initial screening in order for that candidate to have that assistance. And in section 4 for reapplication, I updated unless otherwise disqualified as set forth in rule 5, section 3 above. So that was something that we weren't as specific in which section that was, so I added on that. Page 14, which is rule 6 for examinations. There's a little bit more in here that I have also adjusted. In the section 1, I added to the chief examiner shall facilitate the examination process, and I added may be conducted, coordinated, and or facilitated with an independent testing company. That is because we currently utilize public safety testing for our promotional processes. In section 3, I did add in language that talks about the veteran's preference if applicable. And also in the event that 2 or more candidates receive the same score, the candidate with the highest score on the written portion of the examination prior to adding veterans preference points will be considered having the highest overall score. That is based on the other language that I have found in other civil service rules that I have reviewed. Down in section 4 for veterans preference, there is a little bit of confusion when it comes to veterans preference, or at least in the process in the past. So I added in all considerations for veterans and veterans preference will be pursuant to the appropriate sections of RCW 4104. In that RCW, it does talk that veterans preference points are not applicable for promotional processes. And so I want to just make sure that we're outlining that RCW so that we can point back to that if anyone has a question. It is for initial hire.
I have a quick question. Does it matter what rank the veteran is? Or do all
No.
veterans get
All
the
veterans.
same? Okay.
As long as they were honorably released from the military.
And we do require the veterans preference form. We currently allow individuals to use the public safety testing for entry level. For laterals, typically it is a promotional, so it wouldn't necessarily count. So depending on their history and service, they would qualify for either 5% or 10%. So I have all that documentation and that's what gets included.
Thank you.
Section 5, notification of results. I have added in a piece more or less for my administrative purposes. Examination notifications will be made no sooner than 3 business days immediately following completion of the exam process in order to provide for any appeals to the examination process. This is something that we didn't have designated, and I want to make sure that we're giving candidates a good amount of time to, if they have concerns about the process, to reach out to me and bring that up prior to me issuing a score. It has not happened, but I would not want to provide someone with a score and have them not be happy with that and then have something to say about the process. So this at least gives me time to also get the scores from our personnel and training sergeant, be able to certify the list. It allows me also no certain 3 business days. Our oral boards are typically on a Wednesday. That gives me until the next week before I need to send out notification and finalize that. That gives me greater flexibility in that as well. And the other piece is I added following completion of the process. Historically, since I have been working in this role, we have had 1 oral board a month. However, last month I did need to request a second date from our personnel and training sergeant because we had so many candidates that were coming in right under that time frame. So I wanted to just make sure that we had language in there that covered the completion of that process. So if it is a 2-week process, those candidates in my notifications, they are getting information that following the final date of testing. That way they don't have an unrealistic expectation of when they can hear back from me. And then in section 6, promotional examination, I did make the adjustment to anything that's in police management, and I changed that to designated appointing authority, which could be the chief or his designee. That is also on page 16, so that mirrors the same language in the previous section. On page 17, under Rule 7 eligibility list, I have added the promotional lieutenant with the 1-year effective list. We did discuss adding the lieutenant at the last meeting, so I'm putting that into the rules. Page 18 and section 3, removal of names from list. I added 1 year as passed since the name was placed on the list. It's just further being consistent in our process and our language. And section 4 on that same page, notice of address change, I did add name. Any change of name, address, cell phone number, that way we are continuing to keep that personal identifying information updated. Page 19 for Rule 8, under appointment, section 1 certification, I added in the part of what we call the rule of 3. At the end, it talks about top 3 names on the appropriate eligibility list. And I wanted to make sure we have the designation and 1 additional name for each subsequent open position to be filled. That way it's clear, concise. If someone's not sure what the rule of 3 actually means, they have a better understanding. Section 3, I adjusted the section heading to say removal of names from lists. Page 21, under Rule 9 probationary period, I broke out while the last meeting I broke out each individual position. I wanted to make sure that each had its own separate line. It made it a lot easier to follow than having a full paragraph. I also updated information on about midway down the page to say the probation period may be extended by the same duration as any prolonged leave of absence or light duty assignment where the employee is not performing essential functions under the position under probation. Is something that we've discussed previously, and speaking with command, it does make a lot more sense to be able to give us that ability to just extend that probation a little bit further.
We do that consistently as well with the other side of the house. When we have someone on probation that's out for an extended period, it's kind of a day for day. It's typically when someone goes out on like medical leave for like a month chunk or 2 months at a time, then we'll extend for that same period.
That makes sense.
Under that same page, section 2, termination of probationer. I just also adjusted some language and expanded appointing authority must provide copies of the notice to the Secretary, Chief Examiner, and the Chairperson of the Civil Service Commission. And that is if we were to terminate during probation. And page 24, excuse me. At the top of the page, it talks about cause for demotion or discharge. Under section 3, we did have a discussion, I believe the last meeting and the meeting prior, about number H. And we adjusted the language of that to just say being in illegal possession of, to make sure that we are pretty clear on that. Section or rule 12. Under section 1, I added into an appointing authority in coordination with human resources, collective bargaining agreements, and or city policy may grant a leave of absence. I also expanded the next paragraph to include FMLA or reasonable accommodation language. And also in the employees who qualify under veterans, as veterans, I adjusted that to reference back to the RCW. In page 26, rule 13, under section 5 of destruction of records, I also reference back to an RCW that also speaks to those veterans preference and Washington State retention schedules as well. Under rule 14 for appeals, section 1 grounds for appeal, we did remove letter C, which is reduction in salary for disciplinary reasons. I included that in the new letter D, demotion, including a reduction in salary for disciplinary reasons. Typically, we're not necessarily reducing someone's salary unless it was involving a demotion. And so I felt that it was better set together. And I believe that is all of my suggested edits.
The comparative document, the red lettering one. What is that again?
The red, the track change that are already in red, those are items that we've already discussed at our previous meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I'm just keeping it all in the same document so we can make sure we're recognizing all of the changes.
The only thing I went back on that page 8. Any meeting may be canceled or rescheduled, provided that it doesn't necessarily say who has the authority to cancel that meeting. Is that coded in the RC, into the city code, or?
That might actually lead into an item that Chair Vey is going to discuss, which talks about our meetings. I can absolutely put in some language that talks about who has the authority to do so. Typically, if it were a need on the city side or even my side, I would make the request to my HR director and then have a conversation with Chair Vey. And if it was coming from the opposite side, I feel that the process would be pretty fluid on that.
And that's how we got it.
Yeah.
Everybody talks according to that. Didn't know whether there was a need to find that.
I mean, I don't necessarily feel that there's a need to specify it. If it makes others happy with that, that's fine with me. It would all be in coordination with each other. So.
Sometimes it's very nice.
More flexible that way.
Any questions so far on those edits?
Good job.
Very.
Thank you. So my next steps will be to similarly, like I did this last section, is provide the rest of the changes to the commission staff, just so that they are aware of the civil service updates that we're working on. I have an email that I drafted up the last time that provides that, just says, here's some verbiage, some, expanders, things like that. I give them about a month to bring it up, or even to come to the commission meeting. I let them know when the next one is. The next meeting, I will bring non-highlighted, but still track change version for everyone, along with an accepted version, so we can see what it would look like if everything was accepted. And from there, we can review that and determine the timeline on making any amendments to the actual rules.
Great. Anything further, Megan?
That's all
Thank
for me.
you very much. Great job. All right, and do we have any public comment? Do we have any public participation? I can't tell from that screen if we have.
We have no one attending remotely at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, so that takes us to any other old business. Is none. I have a new business, and I don't know where we're fitting it under new or. It was brought to my attention and I started dropping this on you this afternoon, right before the meeting, typical lawyer. Meeting frequency was in the RCW was spelled out as once a month. I don't know that that is necessary for the Civil Service Commission to be meeting once a month. And so what I outlined, and I suggest maybe we bring it back up next month for further discussion after everybody's had a chance to take a look at it.
Next meeting or next?
Next meeting, excuse me, thank you, Madeline. Next meeting, it basically requires us by the RCW to meet monthly, but there are provisions under the Lacey Municipal Code that allow us to modify that if we can still substantially accomplish the purpose of the Civil Commission meeting RCWs. I think it probably would be best handled by a change to the Lacey Municipal Code, and I believe that would probably involve the city attorney.
Yeah, so we would have to contact Dave Schneider and see how best to quantify that. I know we have similar. We had similar questions with the Left One Disability Board. And how the frequency of that was determined through their rules. So I'll just ask the same question if they want to make the adjustment in the code, or, and I'll send them our updated rules and see if for some reason he thinks it should just be put in the rules.
And if that's the way we can handle it, that's perfectly
Yeah.
fine, since we are at the rule change process, maybe we
Yeah.
don't need to amend an ordinance.
I know some of the bigger agencies and where the DC and I came from, they had them monthly, but I also think those commissions were doing different things under their duties, probably also through their code. So
So as long as the
Find
police
out.
department does not have heartburn over not meeting monthly, you have so much enjoyment from the meetings. So would it be best to proceed with you presenting
can.
to the city attorney, and then you
Yes.
can let us know next
yeah, I
month?
can bring that back to the
Perfect.
table next month.
Okay, thank you.
Next meeting.
We've
Next
addressed,
meeting.
The other N word.
we addressed this previously with the attorney that provides that conference, the civil service conference. I can't think of his name, but
Oh, that
the
one,
one.
Yes,
that's not-
the training one.
yes, that guy.
I know.
And he acknowledged that the state gives the municipals the latitude of having less meetings. So there was somewhere in the code that does provide discretion in the number of meetings. So we address it because it's been brought up before.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe we can get it down on paper so that we don't have anybody questioning whether or not we're.
Mhm.
As long as you don't have so few meetings that you don't
Right.
perceive to be affected by that.
Right, correct. So that is with no further business, or is there any further business with anyone? Commissioner White, Commissioner Wilkins, anything? All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting. All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. I will be presuming from now on.
I know.
Thanks, John.
Hi.